Live from the WDBK studios in Blackwood, this is 91.5 WDBK-FM, Camden County College Radio.
And welcome to 91.5 WDBK for some Midday Madness. You already know. Yes, we are here on this Monday. Yes, September 29th, as October is almost here. I can't believe it. Wednesday, it will be arriving. I cannot believe. Again, September went by in kind of a blip. But yes, hey, we're here to end out the month on a very, very high note. Of course, the last Monday of September, and we're going to have one heck of a Midday Madness show. Lots of sports madness, a lot going on, of course, as this was a big weekend, especially for fans in the Delaware Valley, specifically, of course, Philly fans. A lot going on. Of course, the Phils are now comfortably in the playoffs. We're going to talk about that. We'll talk about the Eagles win, and of course, a specific team that a lot of people like around here in the Delaware Valley, the New York Mets. What happened with the Mets? Well, they're no longer in the running anymore. They kind of took themselves out and shot themselves in the foot. So a lot of fun things happening around the leagues this week, as we'll get to that in a matter of moments. But before we do, make sure to text into the show if you want to be a part of the conversation with our still brand new WDBK text line, 856-345-9325. Once again, 856-345-9325. You can text into the show if you want to be a part of the conversation. And of course, yes, not just the conversation, but our question of the day. And that is, how confident are you in the Philadelphia Phillies for this upcoming postseason run? Of course, yes, folks, we know how the postseason runs have gone for the Phils these past 2 years. Didn't end the way we wanted them to, but that's the question. Are you confident? And how confident are you in the Phillies going into this red October, as it will be here before you know it? Of course, the Phils get a bye, so we get to watch what happens in the wild card rounds, which will be kind of nice to look at as well. But yes, the MLB playoff picture is set. The stage is set for the MLB playoffs, of course, with now the Cincinnati Reds being the final team to get into the postseason, of course, as the Mets lost to the Marlins. And of course, the Mets and the Reds have the same exact record, but the Reds hold the tiebreaker. And of course, that's the reason they get in. So here's what it looks like. Of course, the Brewers have the number 1 seed. The Phils are sitting at the number 2 seed. Of course, the Brewers and Phils get the bye. And then your wild card round for the NL East, for the National League in general, you have the Dodgers sitting at the 3 spot. You have the Reds sitting at the 6 spot. Of course, the Dodgers and Reds, being 3 and 6, will go up against each other in that wild card round. And of course, sitting at the 5 spot is the San Diego Padres, and sitting at the 4 spot is the Chicago Cubs. Of course, 4 and 5 will go up against each other, and the Cubs will go up against whoever wins the wild card series between the Cubs and the Padres, and the Phils will get whoever wins the series between the Dodgers and the Reds. And man, I tell you what, it would be so nice to see the LA Dodgers get beat by the Reds, an upset. It would be so nice to see Cincinnati move on to the next round. But of course, everyone would have that worry, especially Phillies fans, if the Reds move on to the next round, thinking, oh gosh, hopefully we're not the next team to be upset. Of course, the Phils, knowing their history with the Dodgers, some people would want the Dodgers to go up against the Philadelphia, but who knows? We'll see what happens. We'll see how it develops. And then, of course, moving into the American League, well, we got some zingers right here coming up, if you want to call them zingers. Of course, these two fan bases always zing each other, and that is the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox. That's going to be fun to watch. That is going to be definitely very, very interesting. Of course, Yanks have the higher seed at the 4th spot. Then, of course, Boston is at number 5. So those two go up against each other. Whoever wins that series will go up against the number 1 seed in the American League, being the Toronto Blue Jays. And of course, your other wild card series in that round, of course, will be the Cleveland Guardians and the Detroit Tigers. So we'll see what happens with that whole situation. Of course, whoever wins that will go up against the number 2 spot in the American League, being Seattle. So we'll see. Will the Mariners go up against, the Guardians or the Tigers? Two teams that have been proving themselves. Guardians and the Tigers have really been pushing their way forward. So we'll see what happens with that situation. But definitely the one to watch is going to be the Yankees and the Red Sox, no doubt about it. I can't wait to see what happens there. But of course, with the MLB, and I'm going to go right into it. I'm not going to waste any more time, right? We'll get right into some baseball talk. We'll do football in a little bit. Don't worry, folks. Don't worry. Calm yourselves, right? But we got to talk baseball. Phillies are on top right now. Of course, I understand, yes, the Eagles are 4-0. They're undefeated. Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. That game was nuts. We'll have a lot to talk about, of course, coming up in segment number 2 with that situation. But right now with the Phils, of course, yes, they ended their season, luckily, with a W. And this is something that I was talking about for the past couple of weeks, something that I wanted to see the Phils do. And, you know, you look at the Phillies' history and looking at how they've gone into the postseason in the past and just in general, not even going into the postseason, looking at the Phillies' Septembers throughout this whole past decade, and they usually find a way to kind of veer off track in September. And this was something that we saw last year, especially where the Phils managed to get the bye last year, right, of course, but they got spanked by the Mets next round, NLDS. So in this type of situation, it's, I have to say, makes me feel better with the way the Phils are going into the postseason this year. Of course, you get a 2-1 win over the Twins. And not just did you get the 2-1 win over the Twins, but you won the series 2 games out of 3. But this is something where they were able to find ways to win. Now, of course, yesterday, again, the offense wasn't really the top factor. Again, they did come in clutch when necessary. But the Twins had more hits than the Phillies did yesterday, and yet the Phils still came on top. And this was something where, again, the Phils managed to get the victory, of course, in overtime or extra innings, as a lot like to call it. In the 10th inning, right, Nick Castellanos went out on a sacrifice fly, and it scored, of course, Harrison Bader, which won them the game. So this is that type of thing where I think it's definitely good. It's a key type of situation to go out on a winning note. You have to. Because you can't go into the postseason crawling across the finish line. The Phils have done that way too much. They've done it way too much in their past. They did it last season. And you need all around pitching, offense, everything. Now, of course, yesterday it wasn't a big game for offense in general. Yesterday, of course, it was only a 2-1 game, of course, in favor of the Phils. But this is one of those situations where you need to look at what you have and you need to really see the discipline that is coming into your team. And of course, the main thing that a lot of people are talking about is, okay, you're in the postseason. What is the pitching picture going to look like now for the Phillies? Who are you going to start in game 1? Who are you going to start? And of course, you don't know who you're going up against yet. It's either going to be the Reds or the Dodgers. But who are you starting in game 1? And what are your series going to look like? Is Luzardo going to be a reliable option for a starter? Right? How is Ranger Suarez going to be? I mean, Ranger Suarez, how he exited this season, he didn't necessarily pitch the greatest at his last outing, but still, yeah, how are you going to trust him? Aaron Nola, another one. Of course, our radio station coordinator here, Nick Earnshaw, loves Nola. He loves talking about Nola. But still, consistency is what I'm looking for. And whether it's consistency in the bullpen, consistency in the starting pitching. I mean, remember, again, Zach Wheeler's out. You don't have Wheels. So this is going to be another one of those situations where you're going to have to rely on your pitching in general. I mean, you're going to have to rely on other guys to step up. And of course, you have guys like Christopher Sanchez, a guy who was not thought of to be anywhere near a starter. You want to go 5 so years ago. He was kind of a guy that was brought in now and then. But for the postseason specifically, what is going to be your rotation? Of course, now with Buehler coming in, that gives a lot of questions on Walker probably not having a spot now with the Phillies in terms of the postseason roster. But the situation that we're currently looking at right now is what is going to be your lineup? You got Ranger, you got Sanchez, you got Nola. Buehler's been proving himself more and more, of course. But this is going to be something to think about, of course, in terms of the playoff rotation. What we are going to see from what they have to offer. And, of course, that is Ranger Suarez, Jesus Luzardo, Aaron Nola, Taijuan Walker is also still in that mix again. And, of course, led by Christopher Sanchez. But Taijuan Walker, the whole thing with him is, and I've been hearing this from many, many different people, is people don't think he's going to be on the postseason roster. That Buehler has now come in. There's no place for Walker, right? Now, Walker, don't get me wrong, he has pitched better, but there are still a lot of people out there that feel that Walker, any moment, any second, will just fall apart and give up a ton of runs and just start loading the bases up constantly and constant. So with this type of situation and where you're standing right now, you have to look at, obviously, how far these guys can get through the game. Of course, you want to see, okay, are we going to have to bring, say you have a guy like Ranger Suarez in there. Is he going to have one of those games where you need to bring him out in the bottom of the fourth inning? Or is he going to have one of those games where he goes to the seventh inning and he looks smooth? Or, I mean, another one that's been, kind of up and down at times. Jesus Luzardo, what type of game are you going to get out of him? I mean, there's been times that we saw many this season in the regular season of Jesus Luzardo looking lights out. And the next thing you know, I mean, we saw it within specific games, him looking lights out through 4 innings. And then next thing you know, things just fall apart where constant guys on base, allowing these heavy hits where the ball's constantly hit out to the warning track and is just kept in. I mean, these are things that we are seeing over and over and over again. And of course, with Aaron Nola, his ability to not hang the ball over the plate like a meatball for opposing teams to just work with it and, knock it out of the park completely, out of the yard. So this is all those types of situations that you have to look for. And of course, when going into whatever team you're going up against, whether it's the Reds or the Dodgers, of course, the lineup that is put through by those teams will make the decisions on what the order is going to be for the Phillies in terms of pitching. So that is a question, of course, that we all face. But now to kind of transition from pitching and to go into kind of the Phillies hitting styles right now, this is going to be something where in this playoff run, disciplined hitting is going to be key. And as a matter of fact, the disciplined hitting is what got the Phillies to the record that they're at right now. And of course, what I mean by that is being able to not just beat the heck out of the ball, but to actually put the ball in play. And to have guys that can put the ball in play and not try to beat the heck out of the ball every time that they go to the dish, a.k.a. guys like Castellanos, Bryce Harper, etc. And what I mean by that is you have guys like Harrison Bader, who looks for the easy hit, right? Harrison Bader knocks the ball into play. He looks for the gap. Next thing you know, you're sitting pretty. Aldo Kemp has been doing a great job at that as well. And, of course, another guy who was receiving a lot of criticism throughout this season, Kepler. He's another one who's been doing better with that entire situation. And then, of course, you have a guy who I'm so glad to see was able to pick up this award right with Trey Turner. We all know what happened with Trey Turner, of course. Nothing negative. I may be scaring some people with that. But yes, he is the National League batting champion, of course, with Trey Turner finishing out the regular season with 179 hits and 69 RBIs, batting average of 304, 15 home runs. But this is something where, you have guys like this that are not extremely heavy home run hitters. Again, remember Trey Turner, 15 home runs. So that's an okay number. But still, Turner is another one who's been able to put the ball in play. And you've been getting a lot out of the bottom of your lineup, mid to bottom of your lineup. So this is something where, obviously, yes, those guys have been doing their job. Brandon Marsh has been stepping it up as of recent, right? Max Kepler, I already said him, right? I already said Harrison Bader, Otto Kemp, things like that. But not only are you going to need that out of those guys, but you're going to need that at the top of your lineup. You're going to need it from guys like, of course, Kyle Schwarber to continue his great hitting ways, right? Bryce Harper, Castellanos, who was able to get a fly out when needed yesterday. But I know the thing with Castellanos is his discipline in terms of hitting, where Castellanos, the down and away ball, the far outside ball. I mean, there are times he swings at pitches that are in the opposite batter's box. I mean, this is all things that you have to take into consideration when looking at how these guys their plate discipline in general. But with Castellanos, there are many times where his swing is just completely late. And there are times when the pitch is right down the middle, and he is extremely late on the swing. So you need guys like that to step up in a big way. You had Alec Boehm, who came back, and he was doing some well. Of course, he let off the gas a little bit these past couple of games. But again, yesterday, there wasn't a lot of offense in general. So this is the type of situation that you really have to look at with the Phillies. And you have to ask yourself, okay, going into this, how is our discipline going to be at the plate? And how is our consistency going to be at the plate, as well with our consistency pitching-wise? And then, of course, you go to the bullpen. So, again, with this situation, pitching consistency, batting discipline are my two things that you're going to be looking at for the Phils. As you head into this postseason, are you going to be able to have guys that get the job done when it matters most? Are you going to have guys that are able to, fully be reliable? Guys that when they go up, they're going to get the job done. So these are those questions that you have to ask yourself, especially as the Phils now have that home field advantage in the NLDS. That's going to be the question that's going to have to be asked. So we'll see what happens coming up forward with that whole entire situation. But we're going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get into Eagles football. Of course, the Birds being able to come out on top with a originally was looking like it was going to be a comfortable win, but of course, knowing the Eagles, they found a way to make everyone's hearts start to pound a little more at the ends. But yes, the Birds were able to come out with the victory over the Bucs. We'll talk about that more coming up here on Midday Madness on 91.5 WDBK. Again, remember, we have a text line, WDBK text line 856-345-9325. Again, 856-345-9325. You can text in if you want to be a part of the show. And as well, if you want to answer our question of the day, and that is, of course, are you confident, or I should say, how confident are you in the Phillies with this upcoming postseason run, as Red October is right around the corner? Make sure to text into the show once again here on 91.5 WDBK. We'll be right back in a matter of moments for some talk on Eagles football. Much more coming up. Matter of moments. Stick around.
Join us for our 4th annual Transfer and Seasonal Job Fair on Tuesday, September 30th from 10 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. This is a collaborative event hosted by Transfer Services and the Career Planning and Advancement Center here at Camden County College. It will be located on the Blackwood campus in the Connector Atrium. Students will be able to meet with 4-year representatives and employers during the fair. It's a great opportunity for students to learn about the transfer process, explore transfer options, employment leads, internships, and experiential learning opportunities all in one place. Are you a justice-impacted scholar? Well, we're here to help here at Camden County College. Empower your future and unlock your potential with academic support and scholarships, transportation assistance and referrals, essential goods and resources to aid your well-being, student life programs to enrich your college experience as well. To learn more about justice-impacted scholars, contact Ervin Sweeney at the Kansas City campus, who is the Director of Campus Operations and Retention at 856-227-7200, extension 1279. And on the Blackwood campus with Senior Option Program Manager Mark Taylor. You can contact him at 856-227-7200, extension 4437. Let us know what we can do to help.
Did you know we have a fully equipped fitness center right here on the Blackwood campus? It's true. Located inside Papiano Gymnasium and attached to the basketball court, the Wellspring Fitness Center is dedicated to serving all the health and fitness needs of Camden County College in a welcoming and supportive environment. Our staff of skilled professionals will help newcomers and gym rats alike to reach their goals and to develop a positive, healthy future. Open Monday through Friday, it is free of charge to all students, college personnel, and alumni with a current ID card. Free services include complimentary fitness assessments, exercise technique instruction, and workout programming advice. Stop paying for an out-of-the-way gym membership. Pop in and check it out today.
The Accessibility Center provides support services to students with disabilities attending Camden County College. At the Accessibility Center, we strive to create an environment that recognizes differences and builds independence. If you are a student with a disability attending Camden County College, you can connect with the Accessibility Center by calling 856-227-7200, extension 4430, or by emailing accessibilityservice@camdencc.edu. Or stop by and visit us on the first floor of Taft Hall.
Hello, my name is Dorothy. And my name is Kim. We are dental hygiene students at Camden County College, Blackwood campus. Did you know that we have a dental hygiene clinic on campus? Our clinic hours are Monday and Wednesday, 9 a.m. to noon and 1 p.m. to 4. Tuesday, 12:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. and Thursdays, 8:30 to 11:30 a.m. and 12:30 to 3:30 p.m.
At our clinic, we offer preventative services, including cleanings, x-rays, nutritional counseling, sealants, personalized home care instructions, and smoking cessation.
We are located on the Blackwood campus in the Health and Science Building, first floor. Our phone number is 856-374-4930.
Please call or stop by to make your smile brighter.
If you are looking to get more involved on Camden County College's campus, there is a way to do that. You can call 856-227-7200, extension 4374, or go to camdencc.edu/student life and clubs and organizations for more information. That is to get involved on campus with student life and activities.
And welcome back to 91.5 WDBK Midday Madness Show. Of course, right here with you is Vincent Fost here for your Monday, September 29th, last Monday of the month. Can't believe it. Yes, October will be right here. Not only October, Red October, right? We said that multiple times. It's been great. The Phils were able to, again, didn't get the first seed, right? But they got the second seed. They got the bye. The Mets choked. They're miserable. Those fans, they won't stop talking because they're miserable. It's so nice to see, of course, New York fans in distress, right? Well, they weren't in distress with their football team anyway. Jackson Dart and the New York Giants, of course, got the job done against the, well, previously undefeated LA Chargers, as, yes, we do have a Chargers fan here at this station who was pretty up in arms. I mean, hey, what are you going to do? A New York Giants team was able to roll over the Chargers. What are you going to do? Oh, well, not undefeated anymore. The Eagles are, though. That's what matters, right? Oh, well. Anyway, text into the show with the WDBK text line 856-345-9325. Once again, 856-345-9325. If you want to be a part of the conversation, of course, our big time question of the day: how confident are you in the Phillies with the postseason run getting closer and closer? October getting closer and closer. How confident are you in the Phillies for their postseason run this year? Let me know. Leave your name and where you're texting in from. That'd be greatly appreciated. We'll read it over air. We'll read your name over air. Get you some. We'll get our listeners' names out there, right? We'll show the knowledge off that we had of the people that listen to our great show, right? But of course, as promised, moving into the Eagles segment of the show. What do we got going on with the Birds? Well, quite a lot happened yesterday, of course, meaning so, where the Eagles were making it look like it was going to be a comfortable win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, of course, in Tampa, as the conditions on the field were quite interesting. As, yes, the Eagles played the Buccaneers same time last year. Yes, week 4, but it was very similar conditions. Last year, it was around a feel of 98 with high humidity on the field. Well, this year, we bumped it up to 106 with incredible humidity on the field as well. But man, oh man, it was definitely a hot one. I was kind of surprised that I didn't see more cramps. I'm going to be completely honest with you on that one. As I mean, hey, I mean, they had you saw on the sideline there were guys literally holding up covers for the team in general. As I mean, it was just in that type of situation yesterday. Man, oh man, was definitely something to watch. But yes, the Birds were able to come out on top. And this was something where we know how the Eagles were going up against the Bucs. They were 1-4 in these past seasons. Of course, the Eagles changed that now with getting another win, and they haven't been doing so well against the Bucs in the Sirianni era. They finally got his first win against them. And this was something where it originally looked comfortable. And let's kind of go back and see what happened during this game. Well, of course, the Buccaneers came out onto the field looking like they were going to try to get a good drive going, but the Eagles defense had other ideas. And this was one of those situations where, of course, a punt came up. Now, of course, we know what the Eagles special teams have been doing, right, for pretty much these past 2 weeks. They blocked 2 field goals last week. Well, we didn't block any field goals this week, but we did indeed block, yes, a punt. And I mean, what great play from the Eagles special teams. Once again, it was definitely great to see. Of course, Cameron Latu was able to come in clutch with the blocked punt. Sidney Brown being in the right place at the right time, picked it up off a bounce and had an easy entrance to the Bucs end zone for the first touchdown of the game. The Eagles offense didn't see the field until about halfway through the first quarter. But again, knowing as hot as the conditions were yesterday, maybe that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. But of course, when the offense got on the field, they picked it up immediately. Now, this is, of course, where things started to take off for the Eagles. All the momentum was on the Birds' side. And of course, you had the announcer saying it. Tom Brady, who was on call for the broadcast yesterday on Fox, was saying the same thing, of course, where it looks like everything is in the Eagles' court, right? They went into the halftime, 24-6 lead. Of course, now the Buccaneers at the end of the half was able to get a 65-yard field goal. Of course, McLaurin, who was absolutely clutch yesterday, he had a 65-yard field goal as long with a 58-yard field goal as well. And, that was something where, as bad as that first half was for the Buccaneers, they couldn't get anything going. The Eagles' tackling was on another level. Their secondary was on another level, and they were starting to get pressure on Baker Mayfield. And as seen, he did fold. And of course, the Eagles were kind of getting in the head of Baker Mayfield. You saw Quinyon Mitchell kind of talking to him yesterday. They were face to face, pushing each other around a little bit. But I mean, hey, the Eagles were doing everything right. Defense was getting stops. The offense would come on and make them pay for it. And they were burying the Buccaneers. It looked like they were going to run away with this game. But of course, Eagles fans had absolutely no reason to ever think that they're going to run away with a game. Of course, we all felt that way in this past Super Bowl. Even though the Eagles did get an impressive win over the Chiefs, we were all kind of thinking that same thing, where there's still a chance that they can blow this. And of course, a lot of people were saying, I was getting texts yesterday. Some people were texting me, wouldn't it be funny if the Eagles went into this halftime 28-3, up 28-3? Wouldn't that be funny? I'm like, don't even put that thought in my mind. I don't need a Atlanta Falcons, New England Patriots halftime score from that Super Bowl. Don't need that. Last thing I need from Super Bowl 51. Yeah, I don't need that. Don't need it. Nope. Not even going to go there. But now we get into where the problems started for the Eagles. Of course, they came out second half looking like they were going to continue right from where they left off. The offense started with the ball. Remember, in the second half, Eagles started with the ball. Bucs started with the beginning of the game, with the ball at the beginning of the game. Eagles started with it in the second half. Eagles offense had 3 straight 3-and-outs. So if that's not a complete killer of momentum, I don't know what is. And it all comes down to something pretty dang simple. Adjustments. This was something where with Todd Bowles, the Buccaneers head coach, something that the way he played the Eagles in the second half was the way that he played them in all the previous games going up against Nick Sirianni, where he was head coach for, I should say. So he was promoted to head coach in 2022, and ever since then, he's done the same thing to the Eagles. The defensive strategy was very, very similar. And of course, a lot of people were saying, in the past, right, when the Eagles played Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they didn't have their top weapons, right? Last year, they didn't have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, right? In the past, A.J. Brown, they haven't had A.J. Brown at all, actually, as a matter of fact, playing him in the past. So this is one of those situations. People were making up excuses left and right. Oh, the Eagles didn't have these weapons back when they played them here. They didn't have this. Well, I hate to tell you this, but A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith didn't have big games. They had some clutch catches, but they weren't big-time game changers. And the defense that Todd Bowles had ready to go for the Eagles in the second half was an adjusted defense. And Kevin Patullo and this entire offense for the Birds was not adjusted. There was a lot of forcing going into that second half. When you try to force it to one of your number one receivers 3 times in a row, and it gets to the point where you almost get picked off because you're so blatantly trying to force the dang ball to him. I don't know what else to say in that situation. There was a time where Brown was in double coverage and Hurts still forces the ball to him. Now, of course, some people on that situation could have said that there was some pass interference as Brown was bumped way before the pass even got there. But it was just a downright, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, a stupid throw. It was a stupid offensive plan that came into the second half. Tampa Bay adjusted, the Eagles didn't. Downright, that's it, period. Todd Bowles was able to completely adjust his defense. And again, with that run game, especially with the run game, and we know how Kevin Patullo has been calling the run game. I haven't been a fan of it. I know a lot of other Eagles fans have not been a fan of it. But the lack of options that I see in this Eagles run game anymore is kind of disgraceful from what it was. And of course, we know from last year, it was that explosive run game, that explosive offense where Saquon Barkley was getting practically, it was almost written out of a storybook. The guy was getting over 100 or so yards every game and would have around like a 50 or 67 or something insane, 70-yard run almost every game, especially at the end of the season. Around there. It was nuts. It was like someone wrote it in the storybook. But with the run game in general, I don't see a lot of play action. And it's just, I don't see them using the edges. I don't see the Eagles running the edges on Tampa Bay. How many times did we see the Eagles go for a similar up-the-middle run play? And what were the Bucs doing? They had the box stacked. Their linebackers were up. And there were many instances where there was no reason for Tampa Bay to bring their linebackers back. I don't know how many times I saw where there was a huge gap between the linebackers and the secondary. These are the type of things where there was just, again, no adjustment. And the run game seems to be on specific plays. And even with the pass game, there are multiple times. Where are the RPOs? Do we see RPOs? Do we see guys in motion as much? And that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Play action, right? But even with the pass game, a constant little bit of a circle that I see in this Eagles pass game of curl out routes, slants, and laterals. Now, of course, we saw yesterday, and we saw it, of course, a lot in the LA Rams, how the Eagles are on man-to-man coverage. They're one of the best teams in the league when in that situation. I mean, we saw it with A.J. Brown last week on his ability to completely run over Rams defensive backs. And even this week, Brown, when he was able to get the ball again, he only really had 2 receptions. Matter of fact, he did have 2 receptions, for 7 yards. And of course, A.J. Brown took the X and whatnot afterwards, saying his displeasure for the game. Well, it's not like the Eagles didn't try to get you the ball. I mean, they did 3 consecutive times in a row and failed. So you can't say, oh, they're not trying to get me the ball. Well, they were forcing it. That was definitely another reason of the huge failure that the Eagles had in the second half yesterday. But with this past game, I mean, in terms of the explosions, you don't see a lot of explosiveness out of this past game. You see short passes, which is good. I mean, you need short passes. You don't want to be going for the hero play every time. And that was something where it's funny because I was doing kind of a reverse last year of, going after originally the Eagles were always doing the long ball. They were always trying to do for that hero play. Now it seems to have switched where they barely do that. And we saw the long ball try a couple of times yesterday, but it was way off. It was not, it was not on point. I'll say that. The long ball yesterday was just not there. And there were times where when I was watching, it looked like A.J. Brown kind of stopped. There were also times where Hurts just flat out overthrew his receiver. But yesterday in general, especially the second half, it was just lack of adjustment. There's no other way, I think, to say it. Now, of course, I understand you had your issues with the offensive line. Don't worry, folks. I'm not going to ignore that. I understand you had guys coming in and out of the game for the offensive line. I mean, it's the second week in a row that Lane Johnson has been injured and has not come back in a game. Matter of fact, last week, of course, Lane Johnson had the stinger injury, that little neck injury he had last week where he did not return. Of course, they had that cluster with Pryor coming in, Pryor not doing so well, and then Fred Johnson came in. Well, Pryor and Fred Johnson were in this game, but let's just say for the right tackle position, they didn't even mess around with having Matt Pryor fill in there. They put Fred Johnson in immediately, who I have to say has not been that bad. I have to give it to Fred Johnson. I really do. He's been someone where he is a reliable backup. But of course, Eagles fans, we know this in the past where usually when Lane Johnson comes out of a game or when Lane Johnson just flat out even doesn't start in a game, the Eagles record with Lane Johnson out compared to when he's in is nuts. It's like night and day. It's insane. But again, Lane Johnson, he was out with a shoulder injury in the second half. As, of course, like I said, he missed most of last week's game as well. So you had Lane Johnson come out. And then, of course, you had the whole issue that happened with Tyler Steen, who looked like he suffered originally a lower body injury. Now, of course, hopefully nothing else continues to go south with the Eagles right this week. Of course, Tyler Steen was able to come in. But at the end of the first quarter, that's when Tyler Steen suffered that lower body injury. It looked like he was grasping his knee, his right knee. But luckily, something that was so nice to see was that Tyler Steen was walking off under his own power. He did go into the blue tent. He was examined. But by the time the second half came around, he was out. He was out for the first possession, matter of fact, of the second half. So great to see on that side of things. And, of course, like I said, obviously with him being out for the first possession, Pryor went back. And, of course, Pryor, once again, a lot of people were saying, of course, oh, well, he's not that great at right tackle. That's why I didn't play that well filling in for Lane Johnson last week. Well, he's a better right guard. Well, he was put in that position. And man, oh man, it wasn't pretty. Because you look at when Matt Pryor was playing and when the Bucs were able to really get and close that pocket and get the Hurts, you look at where they came through. It was where Matt Pryor was playing. It was that position where the let up was. So that definitely being kind of concerning is having reliable backups for your offense. But at least you got to highlight Fred Johnson. I have to. A guy that has really been proving himself in a great way. So I'm not going to ignore that fact for the offense. Yes, your offensive line, you had guys coming in and out, right? Of course, you had Tyler Steen, right? Pryor was in, then Steen was back in. So again, when guys are coming in and out like that, I don't care what happens, what the circumstances is, you're going to have some little letdowns here and there. Of course, you had some other guys making mistakes. You had Cam Jurgens, who made a couple mistakes. He had a high snap yesterday, the Jalen Hurts. So that wasn't that great to see either. So mistakes were happening. It was hot. It was humid. Guys were sliding all over the place. I mean, if you're watching the game yesterday, you saw that when guys would go down, they would just continue to slide, especially when they fell out of bounds. They would just keep going. It's like a slip and slide out there, the whole dang side of the field. But I understand that. The offensive line was going through it a little bit yesterday, but still, this type of stuff can't happen week after week where the Eagles only play one half of a game. It was literally a complete reverse of what we witnessed last week, and it almost was a full 100% complete reverse. Of course, last week, the Eagles didn't know how to play football in the first half and learned how to play in the second half. Well, now tables turn with them not knowing how to play football in the second half and knowing how to play it in the first half. So that whole entire situation was kind of interesting. But luckily, it wasn't a full utter reverse of the Buccaneers completing their comeback. As again, they were looking threatening. They really were. And, of course, you had guys that were big contributors. Again, thank goodness Jalen Carter was able to come back in the game yesterday. Of course, Jalen Carter originally looked like he had a shoulder injury. As when he was out for a few reps. He was on the sideline kind of playing with his shoulder, so it looked like he had some shoulder discomfort. Now, he did come back after originally being listed questionable, and luckily he did come back because at the end of the game, he was a big force that pressured Baker Mayfield on the Bucs' final little drive. And, of course, the mistakes that were made were Baker Mayfield, of course, he threw an interception to Jahad Campbell in the end zone in the fourth quarter. That was something where the Bucs, they were looking threatening. They really were. And, of course, Moro Ojomo was able to get a sack right there as well. But this was something where, moving on to the Eagles' defense, they stepped up when necessary. Now, don't get me wrong. They had some breakdowns. Of course, the Buccaneers really showed off yesterday that they were able to get the ball down the field. And, of course, a lot of people coming into this game, originally it was said Baker Mayfield he's injured. He's got a possible tricep injury or, I don't know. There was all different types of reports coming out from multiple different people. The main thing was that there's Baker Mayfield has some discomfort. And, throughout last week, that was the main talking point. And, anything, a lot of people like to say, anytime something is going on with a QB's arm, I don't care if it's something extremely substantial or something extremely minimal. It doesn't matter. With a QB, that can affect your throwing arm 100%. If it's a little tiny pain or for something where it feels like your tricep is about to fall off your arm. I mean, this is something where it doesn't matter. Any little injury or any little tweak can affect you heavily. And yeah, with the way Mayfield played yesterday, it didn't look like his throwing arm was hurt that much. Now, of course, he did get lucky. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to cover it up, of course. Where, of course, that long touchdown that went in between the two Eagles safeties of Makuba and Blankenship, McLawn, that was something that was kind of interesting to see. And you even saw on the sideline after that touchdown was scored, Baker Mayfield went over to his guy and said, hey, it made it to you. So, hey, there's a start. I mean, you could tell that ball should not have been thrown. 100%, no doubt about it. There's no way that ball should have been thrown. But the fact that it was able to get right between Makuba and Blankenship, hey, I mean, they got the job done somehow, some way. They were able to complete that pass. And then, of course, there were some other breakdowns by the Eagles defense, like, for example, having Jahad Campbell on Ekbuka for that 77-yard touchdown. I didn't necessarily understand where they were going with that whole entire situation, but it was a little strange. Or I may have those backwards, but matter of fact, but I know specifically on one of those long touchdowns, again, don't quote me on that. There's a possibility I may have them backwards, but I know for one of those long touchdowns, they had Jahad Campbell on that intended receiver. I don't know why you have a linebacker on a receiver, especially one of their top receivers. So that was something that kind of had me questioning. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie about that one. So there were breakdowns, and you saw Vic Fangio. Of course, they put the camera on him up in the boxes, and he was just, I mean, he had his head in his hands like, what are we doing? But again, with that Vic Fangio type of defense, that bend but don't break system, the Eagles defense was able to get a stop when it mattered most. And of course, going back to, oh, look, Jahad Campbell again with that interception was a big piece of it. Now, of course, a big question comes up with the Eagles with the whole entire situation of, you know, what's going on with the defensive end situation. Obviously, you didn't have Nolan Smith in there yesterday. And of course, you also ended up losing another defensive end being Orgbo Okawankwu, who was ruled out with, we're talking about triceps, so we're going to talk about it again, tricep injury. So that situation, of course, happened. So, of course, the question of depth with your defensive end position comes into the question, and was something where we kind of noticed it a little bit yesterday with the Eagles being able to hold the edge in certain situations. I mean, we saw multiple times yesterday Baker Mayfield was trapped in the backfield and somehow, some way slipped away. So there were some of those instances where the defensive line, with the amount of pressure they were getting, was kind of questionable at times. But at the end of the day, they stepped up and they made it when it mattered most. And then going in, of course, to the rest of the defense, my defensive player of the game yesterday had to have been Quinyon Mitchell. Mitchell was sticking on Ekbuka, again, their top receiver for yesterday's game, in a huge way. And Mitchell was all over the place. He had some key pass breakups to save possible touchdowns. And again, was literally all over the field. Now, if there's one little criticism I have for Quinyon Mitchell, it is he has to watch when grabbing jerseys. And this is something that we saw time and time again yesterday, where he got away with it. And the way that the refs were calling some penalties, I'm kind of surprised he did get away with it, because there were some roughing the passer calls that had me ticked off to the point where I was going to throw a brick through the TV. So I'm not going to rant on the calls too much. I don't want to be one of those sports talk show hosts that gives the whole segment about ditching on the refs and blah, 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 blah. But I do have to mention that there were some awful roughing the passer penalties yesterday. But anyway, I can move off that now. Got it out of my system. Yeah, Quinyon Mitchell, he did great with his coverage yesterday, especially man-to-man coverage. But he's got to stop holding on to guys' jerseys, because there are certain refs in the NFL that are going to call that every single dang time, without a question. So you have to be careful with that whole entire situation. You got to watch yourself, because if you get one of those refs that call, I mean, there are refs out there we know, and those of you who have been watching the NFL for years know exactly what I'm talking about. You could touch the receiver wrong and get thrown for a flag. I mean, you could put your hand lightly on a guy's waist, for God's sakes, and be called for a flag for a pass interference foul. So this is all the type of situations that I'm talking about. He did great yesterday. Kudos to him. He's definitely, I mean, in my opinion, my defensive player of the game, without a doubt. Of course, you had great plays from all around your secondary yesterday. Reed Blankenship had some great tackles. Cooper DeJean had some great open field tackles as well. As the Eagles, man-oh-man yesterday, that was something they keyed in on in a big way. Zach Bond, another one. I know he's not secondary, he's a linebacker, but still, Zach Bond also had some great open field tackles. So great to see that from the Eagles. So don't get me wrong, there were a lot of defensive contributors in a big way. Zach Bond, Cooper DeJean, Reed Blankenship. These guys stepped up in a great way. Have to say their names. But again, Quinyon Mitchell, with his ability to stick on his guy, and again, with the pass breakups he had, the key pass breakups he had, the Eagles pretty much were able to shut that down for the most part, except for that little hiccup that they had, of course, in the second half. But overall, got to give it to them. The Eagles defense stepped up when it mattered most yesterday and were able to get the job done when it mattered most and hold a Buccaneers team that looked like they were about ready to have another comeback and have another win, barely by a point. We know how the Buccaneers got their 3 wins this season. It was barely. Some people could say it was luck. But the way things were looking yesterday with the Eagles, it was looking like it was going to be another one of those situations, but the Eagles held them off. Of course, the final play of the game for the Bucs yesterday, the Eagles literally didn't have anyone rushing Baker Mayfield. It was all secondary. They had everyone back. The Eagles were able to hold them off, and they were able to get the victory. Somehow, some way, right? They held on. They remain undefeated. They're 4-0. That's all that matters. That's all I should be focused on. Eagles got the W. Eagles fans took over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Stadium, and we got revenge on the Bucs for these past 4 seasons. I think that's what I should be happy about. I think that's what I'm going to stick with, especially now going into the break. We'll be back in a matter of moments with some more Midday Madness. Of course, make sure to text into the station, 856-345-9325, for just to give out your opinion on the situation, the conversation. And of course, if you want to as well, answer our big time question of the day. How confident are you in the Phils moving into Red October, the postseason? Let us know. Leave your name and where you're texting in from. We'll be glad to say it over air. Get our listeners some little air time. But we'll be right back in a matter of moments here on 91.5 WDBK.
Camden County College Tutoring Services. We are here to help you succeed. Do you want a little extra support to boost your confidence and grades? Camden County College is here for you. Our tutoring services offer personalized guidelines to help you master your coursework, achieve your goals, and stay on track to graduate. Find us on the second floor of Wolverton Library at our Blackwood campus and in the Student Learning Center on our Camden campus. We also offer remote and limited online tutoring options